welcome everyone to a special edition of BS3 Radio Live. And on tonight's show, number one, we have a special guest. Number two, we'll be talking about a topic, the Deshaun Watson allegations. If you're not aware at this point, there are 16 allegations against him for sexual misconduct. Not only is this a wonderful lawyer, but this is my uncle, and he's been practicing law for 36 years, has a lot of knowledge, and it's going to be a really good conversation. So introduce yourself for those that don't know who you are.
Oh, hello, Benjamin's audience. My name is Clinton Killian, and it's true, full disclosure, I am Trey's uncle.
So how long have you been practicing law, and what aspects of or what areas of law do you practice?
God, I hate to say it, but I've been an attorney since 1985. And the main areas I practice in are real estate business and probate, and I primarily do litigation. I sue and defend people from suits. I was an insurance defense attorney for almost 25 years, where if you were in a car accident, you turn it over to your insurance carrier to defend you when the plaintiff sues you for his injuries. The insurance company would hire me to defend you in that case. So that's what insurance defense is.
All right. And I've worked for you on multiple occasions. We'll have some interesting stories if we want to tell those.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, that would be fun. That maybe we have to do that on a returning show, but
maybe
definitely
for April's Fools.
Maybe. So, I really wanted to get you on the show. You also, provided me with some depth and some information as to what's going on with these allegations. And first, I just want to kind of start off is that Deshaun Watson is currently in a situation where he wants to get out of Houston. He wants to get out of Houston, either traded or released. The coach, the GM, the owner has been saying that we're not going to let you go. You're on this team. You're our starting quarterback. And he has been very adamant on, no, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to play. So just a kind of a precursor, this has been going on for a couple of months. So what's your opinion, as we kind of get into this, the beginning stage of how the team possibly feels about him wanting to leave?
Well, it's obvious that they don't. They signed him to a long-term contract, and their basic attitude is, we own you now. And I think they resent the fact that he had the audacity to stand up for his basic human rights, which is, you can't force me to work somewhere where I don't want to work.
Right. True.
And, NFL player contracts is really more mythical than anything. I believe, for example, even though he signed for 5 or 7 more years, I believe an NFL contract becomes void if you refuse to report and play for 1 full calendar year.
True. That's what Le'Veon Bell did.
Exactly. And of course, he has to forfeit his salary for that year. They probably can make a claim for the repayment of his initial bonus and the money that they paid him, what they call the signing bonus of it, the guaranteed money. And that's really the only guaranteed money in a player's contract. And
right.
They pay that money up front so that they can prorate it over the length of the contract to avoid the salary hit and stay under the limit.
Right. True. We have our first comments here. Those that are tuning in, comment if you have any questions or opinions on what's going on. That is my parents. They have a shared Facebook account, so I'm assuming that's probably my mom doing the typing. But she said this is going to be interesting with my brother's opinion from an attorney perspective, which is a lot of the reasons why I wanted to get him on. I think it's going to be very, Very interesting. So he is being very adamant about he doesn't want to be here. And then, which I don't think is a coincidence, these allegations start to come out. At first it was 1, and then it was 2, and then it was 10, then it was 14, and now it's 16 at this point. So talking about the allegations and how they're released and how there's not any names tied to it. So I wanted you to touch on that, and is that a tactic by the attorney?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. A complaint in and of itself is just an allegation. And secondly, when you make an allegation in a document you file with the court, it's fully protected speech. You cannot be sued for defamation about something you put in a pleading and you file with the court. So I can say anything about anybody as long as I file it with the court first. It's fully protected speech. So first of all, these allegations are extremely salacious. They're very sexually oriented. But here's the thing that jumps right out at you. If all of these forced sexual encounters that they're alleging in their complaint actually occurred, it begs the obvious question, why didn't one person go to the police and file a police report? And once the attorney knew of these allegations, why didn't he file a police report? And this is why, as a plaintiff's attorney, you would do something like that. If I file a police report, then the police are going to have to investigate it. So I'm going to get the police to do my initial investigation for free, and they will have to pursue it. Then second, if the police actually file charges against you, that lowers my burden of proof. If you're actually convicted, I don't even have to prove the allegations in court. All I have to do is you've already been convicted of these actions. Now we're just here to talk about damages.
Right.
So a personal injury case like this, you would involve the police because it gives you a free ally. I mean, who are you going to be most afraid of? A detective with a gun and a badge knocking on your door saying, I need to ask this person questions, or some investigator that you have to hire that shows up at their door and they can just slam the door in your face?
Right.
Secondly, the other thing that just jumps out at you that doesn't smell right is none of the plaintiffs are named. They're named as does. Does in the legal parlance just means an unknown person or an undisclosed person. Generally, does are defendants that you don't know are involved in a case. If I sue my nephew Trey and it's Killian versus Sudreth, it would say at the bottom, and does 1 through 20, because there may be other unknown people, but I don't know, but I'm suing all the unknowns. Right. When a plaintiff, and the other reason you use a doe is for a minor or a criminal case where the victims are either of some horrific crime and you don't want their name disclosed. Jane Doe is the victim in this case. And that's how a criminal complaint would read. It's very unusual in a civil case that the plaintiff is not disclosed. In fact, in most jurisdictions, including California, you can't file a civil case without naming the plaintiff, because you have these little things called your 4th, 5th, and 7th Amendment rights, which basically says I have a right to confront my accusers. I have a right to know who they are. And civil cases do not have self-incrimination, and they don't convey any kind of criminal punishment. So there's no reason to protect someone who's bringing an issue to the court, making an allegation, and in turn attempting to deprive a defendant of his right to a fair trial. So I just did a little bit of research on Texas procedure. Their code says essentially what other code says, which is you have to show good cause for not naming a plaintiff in your complaint. I'm sure Mr. Watson's attorneys will file some kind of pleading to disclose who the plaintiffs are so that they can do their research into the people who are making these accusations and figure out whether or not there's any basis to them.
Yeah. And kind of what we talked about, prior to a couple of days ago, is that when they do have to release these names, well, first, do you think they're going to release the names?
Well, they're going to have to. You can't proceed with a civil case unless you know who's suing you, so you can do your basic research.
Right.
And when they do release their names, there's going to be a lot of information who comes out about these people who have made these allegations. And it's going to be extensive because for these people and the allegations they've made, you're going to do your due diligence as his attorney and research every claim that they've made. And, I've been following after you called me. I did the research of all the statements that the plaintiff's attorney has made. And last night, in some exchange he had with the defense attorney where he was trying to refute what the defense attorney had said, which, by the way, is a very, very old tactic. And he fell for the bait like somebody right out of law school would. Mm-hmm. And what the defense attorney did was he said, well, we have information that this didn't happen with these people, or that they signed non-disclosure agreements. And the plaintiff's attorney wrote back, basically exposing what type of work these women were doing and how Deshaun Watson met them and why he had a non-disclosure agreement is a contract, which I say to you, you agree that anything that I outline in our agreement, you will not disclose. And if you do, I can sue you, not whether it's true or not, but I can sue you just for disclosing it.
Right.
That's what Donald Trump tried to do to this Stormy Daniels woman.
Right.
He had her sign a non-disclosure that said, you will not disclose any sexual relationships that you and I had. Well, the plaintiff's attorney stated that Deshaun Watson approached all these women before he had a massage to have them sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever had anybody delivering. That's like, you're going to have a pizza guy sign a non-disclosure agreement before he delivers a pizza to your house.
Yeah.
So obviously there was some kind of interaction between him and these women that he felt the need to ensure that they remained confidential. Well, that doesn't really sound like a sexual assault. I mean, rapists don't come up to their victims and say, well, before I rape you and criminally sexually assault you and batter and abuse you, I want you to sign this non-disclosure so that you don't tell anybody that I did it.
Right.
And furthermore, a non-disclosure agreement cannot prohibit the disclosure of criminal activities. So if he was actually sexually assaulting these women, which is a crime, and there's a reason why it's a very strictly punishable crime, there's no way in hell that anybody would advise them to have his victim sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. If that was the case, then somebody before they robbed you would say, Trey, sign this promising you won't disclose I'm the one who robbed you, and then give me all your money or I'm going to shoot you. It just
doesn't work that way. Now, kind of a follow-up statement / question is a lot of movie stars, especially music artists, hear that is what they do so that it makes sure that it doesn't basically come back to bite them, like you said. What's a better way, as you say, to go about in situations like this, or what is something different that maybe Deshaun Watson could have did?
Well, first of all, the point that you brought up is different in this sense. What they are instructing them not to disclose is consensual activity.
Mm-hmm.
Any activity between two consenting adults that isn't illegal, you can be subject to a non-disclosure agreement. When we settle cases, we generally put a non-disclosure because we don't want the plaintiff or the defendant to go out and tell everybody how much money they made in the lawsuit.
Right.
That's legal. But again, you can't prevent someone from disclosing criminal activity. It's not enforceable. You can never make a contract to prohibit criminal activity or the disclosure of criminal activity.
Okay.
So with these entertainers, they've been doing this for years. You know, a movie actor or actress, a singer, an athlete, if they have good legal advice before they go out on a date or take a trip with someone or spend intimate time with each other, they will have them sign an agreement that you are voluntarily and consensually engaged in this activity with me and that there's nothing illegal or unethical or deceptive going on. And it sort of rose out from the 80s and 90s when basketball players started making large amounts of money and women would intentionally get pregnant or claim that they were raped when it was a consensual activity. So it's not uncommon in people, and it's not uncommon for rich people to do the same thing because they have a lot to lose in a consensual activity where obviously you don't have witnesses.
Right.
And it could besmirch your reputation if something totally innocent happens, but it becomes a he said, she said situation.
Right.
Charlie Sheen, for example, was notorious for that. And unfortunately for him, you can't non-disclose, drug and illegal activity that he was involved in.
Right. So with these amount of women, we talked about when the names are released, the types of questions that they're going to have to ask is going to be extremely detailed. And we kind of talked about this, a couple of days ago. How is this going to affect those women? Because that means they're going to be questions about details of what they did.
Well, yes. So unlike what you see on television, a trial is the culmination of a lot of work by attorneys. After the allegations are made in a complaint and an answer or some type of response is filed, and after you get all the parties who are involved in the case, the next phase of a civil lawsuit is called discovery. And what discovery means is you get to interrogate, interview, and get answers and documents from the other party. So you have things called interrogatories, which is a deposition. Interrogatories, which are written questions that have to be answered under oath. You send out what's called a request for production of documents, where you ask them to give any documents that support their claims. You set them for a deposition, which is an interview under oath in front of a court reporter where I ask you a question and you give an answer and everything is put on the record under oath. And the standard for discovery from the federal level to every state is this: you have wide latitude to ask any question that could lead to information related to your case. Mm-hmm. So when you stop and think about that, that is a huge net to throw out to somebody.
Right.
Now, the other thing this plaintiff's attorney disclosed, and I'm sure if he thought about it more, he probably wouldn't have. Apparently, all these women, according to their own attorney, all these women who had these interactions with Deshaun Watson, he met them on Instagram. And I don't know, he didn't release the context or how he met him or what they were advertising or whatever. But it just seems to me an odd way. And maybe I'm just old and I'm not really up to you youngsters, how you meet people. But it doesn't seem like I would constantly buy services based on who I met on Instagram.
Yeah.
So what that is going to do for the defense attorneys, they're gonna request full access to their Instagram account. And there's a law at the federal level in most states that says once you start a lawsuit, you cannot destroy or delete electronic information.
Right.
That in and of itself can lead to the dismissal of your lawsuit. So all their Instagram accounts, all of their Instagram postings, all their Twitter postings, all their emails, all their texts from their phones, all their voicemails, all of that is now discoverable, and they're going to have to produce it. And of course, the defense attorneys are looking for information that contradicts their claims.
Yeah.
And you can't unbite an apple. Once you've sent something out in writing, you can't erase it and you can't deny its existence.
Right.
So this is the warm up of what is going to be a very extensive lawsuit. And quite frankly, the plaintiffs will have to play defense more so than the defendant in this case, because the defendant's attorneys will go gather all the information that they can get that's out there.
Yeah. Let me do this. Let me give a couple of shout outs to people. We have Marshawn Adams. I went to high school with him. Thank you for tuning in. Also, my coworker Wilkes. Thank you for tuning in. Walter Strong. Also, Overton Claiborne. If you guys have any questions at all, you can post those in either one of the chat rooms. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and also on Twitter. Now, and the other part of this is you cannot, people have to understand that whatever you post on the internet, especially social media, can always be found, and it can always be pulled up whatever you do. So to message, you're right, to message people on Instagram, to me is probably the weirdest way to go about it, with the amount of money that he makes and the reputation that he has. That's the part that I want to also talk about. His reputation is on the line, and his coach, his college coach, vouched for him. I haven't heard any other stories yet, but I know, his coach, he can't say he didn't do this, but he said, I've known him since he was a teenager. And for someone to throw away their reputation like this, to me, just seems is a big question mark.
It's careless, there's no doubt. I mean, you saw this a couple of years ago when Kevin Durant played for the Warriors out here in the Bay Area, where he sets up a fake Twitter account where he's pushing Kevin Durant and questioning his own teammates as if no one could ever figure out it was him, because all these things leave footprints. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you're absolutely right. This man is a multimillionaire. And so regardless of the reasons he was getting these interactions, why aren't you paying a little bit more money to get a higher level of interaction? It's just like when Robert Kraft got arrested at a massage parlor in Florida that he drove up to in his chauffeur-driven Bentley and paid this woman $40 to give him a happy ending. Come on, Robert, you're a billionaire.
Billionaire, right.
Spring for a hotel room. Order you a discreet woman. But he did it all for $40. I mean, he made $40 in about 30 seconds. Can't you spend for 2 minutes?
Right.
And so at some point, you have to act at a certain level because you're now exposed. And as someone as high profile and a celebrity such as himself, he has to realize you have a target on your back now.
Yeah.
And the things that you did when you were unknown and broke and didn't have very many resources, you really can't do them anymore.
Yeah. Those days are long gone now.
You know, there's a story about a basketball player when you were a kid who was from Oakland and who made it big, you know, was all NBA and everything. Well, he comes back to Oakland and he drives his car one night to, one of the neighborhood he grew up in because he wants to see his high school sweetheart. And he gets out of this very expensive car in a not so good neighborhood, has on enough jewelry to sink Fort Knox, goes in this woman's house and they kick it for a little bit. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, he's walking back to his car and surprise, surprise, they rob him.
It's on bricks. Or was it gone?
No, they put a gun to him and stripped all his jewelry off and took his
Oh.
keys and drove off with the car. Well, gee, let's see, you put out a neon sign, hey, I got money, I got gold, I got everything, and there's no cop within 10 miles of here, so what do you think the average criminal is going to do?
Right.
Now, if he was just Joe Blow who had just gotten off work, there's probably not a likelihood anybody would have bothered him. But when you come into the neighborhood with the brightest neon sign and an arrow pointing down to you saying, rob me, well, someone's going to accommodate you.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
This is going to be a lifelong lesson for him, regardless how this case turns out, that there are just some things you can't do anymore when you're famous.
Yeah. Now, talk about the attorney that's filing the lawsuits. What's his background that you know of with him?
Well, I don't know that much. I'd never heard of him. Wouldn't know him from Adam. He's a Texas attorney, and I've never practiced law in Texas, and I've never heard of him. But already, again, the public record is out there, and now people are digging in it. I'm sure people are being paid to dig for it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, over the weekend, there was a video released of him getting a lap dance in a strip club.
I hope he's ready, because
this was
probably more.
This was not too long ago. Apparently, this was in 2019.
So they didn't have to go that far back then.
They did not have to go that far back. And I don't know if I'm proud enough, if I'm supposed to be a high-profile attorney, I don't think I'm going to be getting lap dances in a strip club while people are videotaping me.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Deshaun Watson's lawyer, I wanted to look up to get his exact name. Is what do you know any information about him? I know his name is I'm trying to look it up, but what details or anything do you know about him?
Oh God, what is this man's last name? His first name is Rusty. What is his name?
Here, let me see the power of the internet. Rusty Harden.
Rusty Harden. So Rusty Harden is a well-known, nationally known lawyer. He's handled a lot of high-profile defense cases. I believe at one time he was George Bush's lawyer. So let's see. I'm looking him. Oh, right. He was involved in the Enron scandal. He represented Arthur Anderson. He has represented Rudy Tomjanovich, Warren Moon, Wade Boggs, Rafer Allison, Scottie Pippen, Steve Francis, Calvin Murphy, Roger Clemens. That's where I remember him from.
Wow. Long stat sheet.
Adrian Peterson, NASCAR driver Kyle Busch, and he represented Joel Osteen and Victoria Osteen. So he's a well-known litigator. He goes back for years.
Wow. So he's done this before. That's multiple times. You can probably count on both hands.
He's represented, I remember hearing about him back in the 80s. So he has defended a lot of high profile people in high profile cases where there were very high stakes involved. And so he's good at his job. I was just looking through here. He represented the estate of that old man that Anna Nicole Smith married. If you remember, she tried to claim that she inherited everything and she got nothing out of the case. So he represented the estate. So, you know, I always tell people it's not the best lawyers are not the smartest and they're not the most crafty or brilliant. Because we all went to law school and we all got certified by a state agency to practice law. What separates lawyers is their diligence and their tenacity and their thoroughness of doing their job. And obviously, he has been involved in a number of cases where it was necessary for him to grind every rock into the finest grains of sand that he could to win. And that kind of thorough action is what's going to occur here. And of course, it's all legal. There's nothing unethical or wrong with it, but I guarantee you they will know more about these women than these women know about themselves when it's over.
Wow. Overton Claiborne says Robert Kraft loves the culture. That is true. He does. He definitely does. A comment from Rays, Bucks, and Lightning. Thank you for tuning in. He said my Tampa Bay Bucks will repeat. I think they have a chance. I'm not gonna say it's a guarantee, but I think all these players that they're signing, I think they definitely got a shot. So what approach would you have? We go on both sides. What approach and what game plan going into this would you say each attorney would need to approach this with?
Well, for the plaintiff, he's got to get it above the he said, she said level. The standard of proof in a civil case is a more likely than not, which means 51% wins. So if it's even, you lose. But if you can tip the balance just one iota, you're going to win. That's pretty hard when all you have is your word against someone else. This plaintiff attorney is going to have to find more evidence than the statements of his clients. Now, he made references to having Instagram statements, and he has released some of them. The statements that he released are somewhat generic. There's nothing in there that is inflammatory or the so-called smoking gun that proves that he was a sexual assaulter. They actually are pretty bland that would apply to anything that anybody would say to a casual acquaintance. So he's going to have a little stronger pile of evidence than just his plaintiff statements. On the defense side, it's a much easier case in that sense because they have an easy target to hit. The plaintiff has left a life and a footprint behind. So they're going to be able to get much more information about the plaintiff than the plaintiff's attorney will be able to get about the defendant.
Right.
And they're going to be able to restructure his interaction with each of these women, both before, during, and after any encounter he had with them. So they're going to build the timeline. This is when he first reached out to him. These are the conversations they had. This is what occurred. This is what occurred after. And again, if there was an actual sexual assault like he's alleging, at some point out of these 16 women, one of them independently would have said, I'm going to the police. This man sexually assaulted me. I feel violated, and I'm going to report this to the police. Now, because if he's a serial abuser and a sexual assaulter, this is going to happen over a period of time, and there's going to be many more victims, and one of them would have gone to the police. But you don't have that in this situation.
Right.
Which is very kind of, as a defense attorney, that raises red flags for the plaintiff's case.
Yeah.
So what you're going to see is a lot of information about the plaintiffs, much more so because it's just one person. There's only so much you can dig up about Deshaun Watson. It's just
right.
one person. But you can dig up a lot on 16 people.
Right. That's true. And that's going to take a lot of time. And I kind of wanted you to touch on, a lot of people watch TV. They watch Judge Judy. They watch Law and Order. They watch all these shows, and it just seems like these things happen quickly. How long is this process? You think, how long is this going to take?
Well, again, I'm not real familiar with Texas procedure, but I can tell you in general, it takes about 3 years to get a case to trial.
Wow.
I'm in a trial now that started in 2016. The case started in 2016.
Wow. I did not know that. 3 years.
Minimum 3 years.
Minimum. And then when you talk about the research they're going to be gathering off of all of these women, that's a lot of background work, to dig up.
Yes, it is. And so the way it works is, like I said, you filed a complaint. There's the pleading stage where you're trying to figure out what's valid, what's not valid, what you're denying, what you're going to answer to. There's motions you can file to get rid of a case from the very beginning. A motion to dismiss, a demur, a motion for judgment on the pleadings. There's all kinds of things you do in the very beginning to get rid of a case. Once you settle down with these are the basic allegations and these are the basic denials, then there's that process called discovery, as I explained to you.
Right.
16 people involved, 16 plaintiffs. You figure for every plaintiff, there's probably 3 or 4 people each that you would depose. Because the first question you ask them is, name everybody who's a witness who can support your allegations.
Right.
And then you're going to depose all of those people. And again, you're dealing with a rich defendant who has resources. And plus, don't forget, he may even have insurance that will cover him for this.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
a good point.
Insurance policy is going to kick in, and they're going to pay the defense. And insurance companies will pay for attorneys to fight a claim rather than pay the claim. And there's some tax and financial reasons for doing that. Basically, paying an attorney's an expense, whereas paying for the settlement of a lawsuit comes out of their resources. So they don't mind paying attorneys to defend the case and to dig as thoroughly as they can. So if the insurance is actually kicking in, which is a strong possibility, because you can buy liability insurance to cover anything except intentional acts. So there may be some insurance that occurs. For example, if any of these assaults occurred in his home, his homeowner's insurance will probably kick in a defense.
Wow. That's a good point.
Now you got all these resources doing all this digging. Then at some point, the judge says, okay, go try and settle the case. That's called mediation, where you're going to meet, you're going to have a mediator, and he or she's going to try to talk you both into settling the case. Then if you don't settle it, you have a pre-trial conference to get ready for trial. You have to prepare all your exhibits and witnesses and everything, and then you start the trial. And a trial like this could easily take 3-4 months to try a case with 16 plaintiffs in it.
Yeah, That's true. That's true. Let me give another shout out to Ivan Dawkins. He's a co-host on the podcast called The Forecast with me and himself, Wilkes and A-Trap, and we talk a variety of topics. That's on Monday nights. My dad put a comment in. This sounds like the power that be are trying to damage Deshaun's reputation to keep him from getting signed by another team. Let's touch on that, because kind of what we talked about off air is that it doesn't. I mean, maybe this would encourage him to stay, but this diminishes his value if they were going to try to trade him, because you're smearing. It's a smear campaign that you're putting them on. You're seeing more and more articles saying serial rapists. Like that, to me, that's wordplay to find not only the NFL teams, but for himself and for everyone else that's going to see it, because everyone is watching it and seeing this.
Well, and not only that, is diminishing his brand and his value. Last year, I saw Deshaun Watson. I forget the product, but he was on a national commercial. I guarantee you won't see that commercial anymore. You know, his endorsement of shoes and athletic gear and all of that, that's scrubbed. Nobody's going to use him to advertise. And so he's already taken a financial hit just for having these allegations made. As it drags on, it doesn't just increase his value, but in a perverse way, it ensures that he will stay in Houston, because no one's going to make an offer to trade for him with this cloud of being, as you said, that people are saying, a serial rapist hanging over him. You know, and the NFL cannot promote a player who all the fans will be terrified to be around. And so absolutely, it appears that he's going to be damaged to the point where no team will take him. At this point, realistically, he couldn't even sign to play in the Canadian League.
Wow.
Because who's going to take, you know, an accused serial rapist to come play in their town?
All right.
So the cynical, paranoid, conspiracy person could say this is all a bigger game to sort of cut his options off so he can't leave and he has to honor his contract. And, you know, there's an old saying, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean someone isn't chasing you. And in this case, you know, there's something sinister, something more sinister going on than just a he said, she said dispute.
Right. A comment from Ivan Dawkins that we can both comment on is that, but the Texans could void the contract due to conduct detrimental to the team. This could benefit the team.
Well, in the short term it would, but not in the long term. They void the contract, they get nothing for him in return. If it turns out his attorneys blow these allegations up and he's exonerated, then he becomes a free agent with no obligation whatsoever to the Texans. And if they void his contract, he doesn't have to pay back his signing bonus.
That's them just being out of money. That would be them being out of the money that they've already paid.
The Texans would be out of the money, and they wouldn't have an asset to trade for exchange of anything. So it's like, yeah, I don't want to pay my house mortgage, so I'm going to blow up my house. Well, you're not going to get the insurance when you blow it up. That's going to go to your mortgage company. So you're going to be left with a hole in the ground and no house.
Right. Now, and we have my uncle, Clinton Killian. He is a California attorney, and he's been practicing law for 36 years. If anybody has any questions or comments as you are tuning in, we can definitely get those asked and answered. So if you hypothetically were Deshaun Watson's lawyer, what would you tell him to do at this point in time and going forward.
Sit down, be quiet, let us handle this. At this point, it's just like the old cop shows you see. You have the right to remain silent. Everything you say can and will be used against you. Well, that's your Fifth Amendment right to criminal confessions and self-incrimination. There's a civil version of that. It's called an admission. Anything you say while you're involved prior or during a lawsuit can be used against you. It's called an admission against interest. So, Deshaun, you don't text, you don't tweet, you don't Instagram, panagram, zigzag, whatever those things are called. You're off all social media. Secondly, you don't even talk to friends and acquaintances. Somebody says, Deshaun, what's going on in your case? I can't say anything. My attorney has instructed me not to discuss it. You understand. He doesn't say anything to anybody. He didn't say anything to his girlfriend because unless he's married to her, there's no confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants somebody to talk to, he talks to his attorneys, his priest, or his wife. If he doesn't have a wife, he shuts up.
Or his dog, if he has a dog.
Well, the dog may squeal on him if he has enough bones, so I wouldn't even talk to the dog. Right now, his only friends are lawyers, and that's all he should be talking to.
Right.
Because, despite what people think of the legal system and profession, especially in civil cases, the truth basically is going to win you the case. If you haven't done anything wrong, it's easy to prove. And again, because the barrier is so low, you can do that. But on the other hand, you can't incriminate yourself or shoot yourself in the foot or harm your case in any way. So at this point, he just needs to be quiet and stay low.
Yeah. Ivan says, ask Ben Rossenberger. Yeah, for sure. He was in that situation. I don't know. It's probably 10 years at this point, probably when he was in kind of a similar situation. And he's scot-free. I mean, people still bring it up, but it hasn't affected him. Now, there's a distinct difference between him and Deshaun Watson, though.
Well, aside from being black and being a black man in a southern city accused of this, the biggest thing about Rossenberger's case is this. He was behaving like a serial predator. He's going to these small colleges all over the country and essentially picking up little co-eds. All of them, though, were over 18 years of age. And all of them, according to him, had consensual interactions with him. And he always took 3 or 4 buddies with him who all verified, yeah, she came on the bin and she offered to have sex with him in the bathroom. And we stood outside the door while he did his dude. And she was smiling and happy and came out. So he, most people don't know that the word prophylactic, aside of being a condom, it also means preventive measures. So he took very prophylactic measures to protect himself. Where Ben screwed up, so to speak, he went to a golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. And he started messing with a grown woman who was in her 30s, who also had friends who watched his behavior. She's the one who got the settlement because she had a strong enough case against him that he just had to write a check. The second thing that Rossenberger did is he got married.
Pretty quickly after that.
He got married as soon as the allegations were made. All of a sudden, I think I need to be married, and I'm taking my ass home every night. And I'm sitting right here beside my wife. Oh, no, I'm not going to no Yazoo State College and picking up some 19-year-olds anymore. He gave up that life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the huge difference. And again, messing with a grown woman who knew and it had enough interaction with grown men on how to protect herself from serial or predatorial people. She's working in the public, but she also knew she's vulnerable, so she protected herself. And that's why he settled with her, because if it had gone to court, he may have easily have faced criminal charges.
Yeah.
So he settled it. He wrote her a check, and he got away with it. She didn't press criminal charges, and they all went their happy way. And then he got married, and he goes home every night.
and the rest is history. And he's still a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers to this day. Now, Deshaun Watson's girlfriend, is there anything that she can do to affect him positively or negatively?
Marry him.
That's the positive side.
A wife cannot testify against her husband. So if she has any information that could hurt him, he needs to get on one knee and pull out a ring and say, "Baby, I love you. We're going to be together forever or until this trial is over." Whichever one comes first.
Right.
But no, seriously, if I was in his position, I'd marry her right now. And the second thing that he would do is he would ensure that none of her friends have anything potentially harmful to him.
Yeah.
And he needs to know what she was telling her friends. So he needs to sit her down and have a very heart-to-heart. I'm sure he already has, but if he has not, he needs to do it right away. Because the negative thing is, again, there's no confidentiality between boyfriend and girlfriend.
Right.
She can be subpoenaed. All of her records and all of her interaction with him can be subpoenaed, and she can be forced to testify against him. If I give you a subpoena to show up for a deposition, you are legally obligated to do so. And if you don't, I can get an order of contempt against you and put you in jail until you do. So unlike a criminal case, you can compel testimony in civil cases. And so she would potentially become a wild card. Now, my gut feeling says she doesn't know anything that's harmful to him. But again, if he had any inkling that she did, he should marry her right away.
Yeah. You should be proposing right now. Or he maybe already should. It should be ring shopping online right now.
Online. No, go to the store. Knock on the glass. I want that one right there.
The biggest one you got. Man. So what do you think the outcome is going to be? And also the second, kind of a two-part, the outcome of these allegations, and then the outcome of his career, because he's still in his prime. I don't even know if you can say he's reached his prime. This year would probably be his prime, and these next 10 years are his prime years.
Well, first of all, the NFL and their propaganda machine is very forgiving. Ray Lewis is involved in killing 2 people in Atlanta, and suddenly he becomes an angel. There's been murderers, drug dealers, wife abusers, assaulters. I mean, everybody gets a pass in the NFL, except those damn people protest social justice and racial inequality and racism, police brutality. We can't have none of them.
Right.
But we can have plenty of murderers and rapists rolling around in here.
That's true. No lies.
And so if he's found not liable, if this thing goes all the way to trial, and after all the evidence is in and he's not found liable to any of these women, he will be paraded whatever team he winds up on. and his career will continue to blossom. If he goes to trial and all this information comes out and he winds up being held liable for a lot of money, his career is essentially over. People have said, and I think one of your callers said, why doesn't he settle it? This is not the kind of case that's going to settle, at least not for a nominal amount of money. If he did it, they're going to want millions.
Oh, yeah.
If he didn't do it, it's too late to settle it to keep them quiet. See, the plaintiffs have sort of jumped out of the plane, and there's really not a parachute. This is going to go all the way to the end. I can't see, with 16 plaintiffs, an admission, settling a case like this is an admission you did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of settling with 16 people is going to be less than, it's going to be less for him, the cost of trying the case. See, in this case, the defendant is basically saying, if I try it all the way, it's going to cost me less than if I settle it, and I could very well win. So I have no incentive to settle it right now.
Right.
You see, the plaintiff's attorney played it wrong. If he was looking to settle the case, he would not have gone public with these allegations.
Right. He would have did that quietly, and then it would have
done it quietly. Say, look, let's sit down, talk settlement. You could have reached a non-disclosure agreement, paid him some money, and everybody went away with money in their mouth shut. Once you publicized it, the defendant has no incentive to settle, because what is he getting by settling? He's not getting silence because all the allegations are out there.
Right.
And settle it is a tactic, a mission that something happened, and I'm afraid to go to trial. If he goes to trial and win, he's vindicated. So he has no incentive at this point to settle, unless it's for like $1 or something.
But that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So
$1 divided by 16 is not a lot.
Right. So like I said, this is akin to the plaintiffs have jumped off the airplane. You can't say, okay, I want to stay on the plane now. Well, it's too late. You're free falling.
Right.
And he has no incentive to give them a soft landing. At this point, he's going to try to continue the analogy. At this point, Deshaun Watson and his attorneys are driving them into the dirt.
Yeah.
This will be a no survivor crash.
Yeah. My dad said this sounds like the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, they are very good at signing rapists and abusers. Now they've done better. Now they did sign Alden Smith. But,
well, they cut him today, right?
Yeah, they said they're not bringing him back. Which, from what I'm hearing, according to sources, is that there's something wrong. I don't know if it's with him or what, but there's reasonings behind, because they were going to bring him back, but it sounds like there's something else that could have happened there. Orlando Pace, thank you for tuning in. He said facts, probably into a comment that you were saying. But this is continuing to. This seems to be continuing to evolve every day. Like there's one day that you'll read an article, and the next day you see something totally different. And so, going into we're in the off season right now. The training camp's gonna be in a couple of months. In this situation, does he not play? Going into this, does he just sit out? What do you think his options are if this is going towards training camp and draft and all that kind of stuff?
Well, what I have found very telling about the Houston Texans' response to all this is very non-committal, very non-supportive, and is creating a huge disincentive for him to do anything to help this team, which kind of goes back to what's really behind all this.
Right.
he's going to be in, if this thing continues along this trial path, he's going to be involved in legal proceedings for the next year or so. So why have the distraction of football? Um,
Yeah.
I'm not him, and I don't know his financial situation and all the ins and outs. But if he really wants his freedom, I think this is a year that he takes to let his body heal, to sharpen his mechanics, to go meet other teams, and to find his landing for the 2022 season. And just, I wouldn't step another foot into Houston Stadium from this point on if I was him.
Yeah. Which that was his kind of plan anyway, because he was not going to play for them. So it's kind of ironic that that was going to be his choice, but now this is definitely going to be his choice.
Right, and again, it's very contradictory of the Texans to behave this way. If you want him back so badly, you're not going to get him back treating him like he's a pariah.
Right.
I mean, what's his incentive to do anything to help you?
Right. That's true.
It's a huge disincentive is what it is. And it's almost like I said in the beginning, it's like they're trying to break his will. But look, this kid has gone through hell growing up. He appeared in 2 championship games as a football player. He's overcome injuries, and he's shown how tough and resilient he is. So to think that, the whining from the Texans is going to break his spirit, I think they've grossly underestimated their leader.
Right.
And it also shows that they had no appreciation for the type of person they had on their team. But it's typical, quite frankly, of that organization. They seem to be run by people who don't have a clue what they're doing.
Right. And they released J.J. Watt, just like it was. He came in there and asked, and 5 minutes later, he was released. And it's a different story, with Deshaun Watson.
And which makes even less sense. I mean, he was Mr. Houston. During the flooding, he raised all this money. He does all these charitable things in the Houston area. He's on commercials all through Houston. He's obviously their most visible and popular player, and has been probably in the history of the franchise.
Yeah.
And he comes into your office and says, "Hey, I want to go play somewhere else." Okay. That's not quite the way you run it.
Yeah, that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. But this organization has been on a downturn for the past couple of years. They signed Deshaun Watson, and he says, I like playing with DeAndre Hopkins. They say, okay, we're going to trade him for a running back that's washed up. And then he says, why don't you guys interview Eric Bieniemy? They said, well, we already have people that we're interviewing. And then they kind of reluctantly interview him as a last kind of ditch effort, knowing that they weren't going to hire him. And then they hire some other guy that, had. So when you have a star player, and I want to get your opinion on this too, when you have a guy that you pay millions upon millions of dollars, wouldn't you want their opinion? Wouldn't you want to know, like, not to say that they have to fully approve of it, but ask them, what do you think about this?
Well, it goes back to running a sports, particularly a football franchise, a certain way. Oh my Lord, my nose is bleeding. Can you give me
no
a handkerchief?
All right, we're gonna pause here, but I think with when it comes down to how you run a franchise, you have to.
I'm sorry.
You okay?
Yeah, it's sinus season, and my sinuses are sensitive, so
Okay.
Occasionally that will start it to bleed. But to get back to what we were talking about, what most people don't realize about a sports franchise like the NFL You can make money in an empty stadium and a 0-16 record.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to win, and you don't have to have fans. Donald Sterling, when he owned the Clippers all those years, proved that. He spent more money on a popcorn machine than he did for anything to bring in players. In order to win, you have to spend money.
Yeah.
The Dallas Texans appear that they've taken the attitude that they're going to make money anyway because the TV revenue will outstrip anything that they get locally or with fans in the seats. And so this money is created in arrogance. The second thing is they have, from top to bottom, they're a team that's run that's instilled with what they call these Christian values. You know, Bill O'Brien stayed coach for so long because he prayed every day with the owner's son. They got rid of DeAndre Hopkins because they didn't like his lifestyle. You know, Bill O'Brien brings him in the office and says, "You got 3 kids by 3 different women. We're not sure we like that."
Really?
Well, you know, you're not paying him to be a daddy. You're paying him to catch a football. And
Right.
then they bring this Jack Easterby guy in who has never had any football application skills. He's only been a chaplain at teams. And you turn the entire franchise over to him. So it seems like they're more interested in instilling these religious values than they are winning or running a football team.
Yeah. And Ivan says, but that popcorn was good though.
Really? You think so? The Clippers, you realize when the Clippers were sharing the Staples Arena with the Lakers when Donald Sterling owned them, those front seats at the Clippers game you could buy for as little as $20. And I don't mean off scalping. I mean you could get a season ticket for a court-size seat for about $25.
$25. Wow.
The same ticket when the Lakers played was about $6,000.
Wow.
So if you like stale popcorn that's got, you know, rocks in it, then yeah, you would have loved it.
But yeah, the Texans are just a bad overall franchise that obviously they're not that concerned about winning, and they're not that concerned about backing their players. He said, "Laugh out loud. Never had it. Just kidding."
Well, you know, look at a football example. Look at the Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals started in Chicago. Then they moved to St. Louis. Then they moved to Arizona. How many times since 1940 did they ever make the playoffs? The Bidwell family owned the Cardinals when they were in Chicago. This is the 3rd generation of Bidwells who have owned this team.
Wow. And
you name any player that you can think of who was a superstar for the Cardinals who lasted there. They traded Terry Metcalf, their best back ever.
Yeah. The only person was Emmitt Smith, and he just came there for 1 year.
No, Emmitt Smith was washed out. The only star the Cardinals ever had was a quarterback in the 60s and 70s named Jim Hart. And you probably never heard of him.
No, I haven't. I was going to look him up to see.
Yeah, look him up, Jim Hart. And so they traded Terry Metcalf, who was their best back. That guy who was the back for the Giants when they beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. I can't remember his name. But he started with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals traded him to the Giants for, 6 empty Coke bottles or something. He goes to the Giants and he wins the Super Bowl because they didn't want to pay players. And so when they got good, they got rid of them. And it wasn't until, they finally were able to get a generation of Bidwells that said, hey, let's try this winning thing out for a little while, see how this works out. That they started winning because they started spending money.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. On the Cardinals ownership, Neil Lomax.
Quarterback from the 70s, went to Portland State.
Fitzpatrick, Fitzgerald. You're talking about Fitzgerald.
Right. But
Larry, yeah.
But who owned the team when he got drafted and why he's been there his entire career? This is the generation of Bidwells who have spent money.
Who understand.
Well, they want to win.
Yeah.
I mean, Tampa Bay was the same way. The Glazier family figured out back in the 80s, we can be the clowns of the universe and still make money. They spent a little money in the late 90s and the early 00s, and they won a Super Bowl, and then they disappeared.
Yeah.
So, winning in especially football is very predicated on how much you spend for a team, on a team, and the players. Every successful team has spent money to keep good players. And the ones who are always drafting first are the ones who trade their good players for more draft picks and money.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is what the Texans are doing wrong in this. They took a valuable asset, and it was more important for them to denigrate and lower its value to teach him a lesson rather than say, hey, this guy is at one of the highest value trades right now. They could have gotten 3 first-round draft picks for him.
Yeah.
And a frontline player, a starter, maybe even 2. And now they're going to get, yesterday's newspaper for him.
Right. And that was their approach. Their initial approach was, if you're not giving us 3 first-round picks, we're not even having a conversation about a trade. And then this comes up, and now it's, yeah, you're right. You won't get close to anything. And there was the 49ers that was interested. I know the Bears were interested. I mean, really all teams really should have been on the table.
And they did offer them what they asked for initially. But like any dumb negotiator, when they asked for something, someone said, okay, we'll give it to you. Well, wait, I want more. Well, the Rams, look what the Rams gave up to get Matt Stafford.
Yeah, which he's an aging. I didn't really understand that trade. He's an aging quarterback that you giving up.
So you think the Rams would have given up that much for Deshaun Watson, or not, or even more? Of course they would.
Oh yeah.
But again, the Texans appear to be more comfortable seeking revenge and degradation than they are to make good business decisions.
Right.
And quite frankly, it looks like it's going to blow up in their face. Because again, if he sits out the year, he vindicated in this trial, he's going to be able to write his ticket with any other team he wants to play with. And all Houston's going to be left with is, see, we told you he was a bad person just because the jury didn't feel that way, and just because the judge didn't feel that way, and just because these women didn't get anything, we still know we're right.
Yeah, you just named 3 different reasons why they're wrong.
Exactly. And so, it's just a crazy way to run a franchise.
Yeah.
So I hope he prevails. I hope, he's vindicated. He certainly went out and hired a very good law firm who has a very good track record for being very tenacious, and who will dig through these allegations and give him the best defense he can get. And I'm going to enjoy watching it, especially once the discovery starts.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of states, and I don't know about Texas, but in a lot of states, deposition transcripts can be made public. You see, that's what put Bill Cosby in jail. Because the plaintiffs in his case got a court order to release the transcripts where he was bragging about how he drugged all these women because he thought he had criminal immunity and couldn't be prosecuted.
Now, why would he think he had criminal immunity?
Well, glad you asked that. So his lawyers thought they had worked out a deal with the district attorney for him to have immunity if he sat for the deposition and essentially told the truth. But any kind of agreement like that is unenforceable unless it's in writing and signed by all the parties. So the lawyers said they had an oral agreement. So Bill Cosby, if you ever want to read some very fascinating material, you can see it online. I've read the deposition online. He is sitting there bragging about drugging women. He explained how he did it over and over, all the way back to the 60s. He explained the different drugs he used over the years and which ones were more potent than others. And he was sitting there with this smug, hubris look on his face like, see, I got away with it. Well, the transcript was supposed to be private. And when the DA, or rather when the plaintiff's attorneys made a motion to make them public and he objected, the previous DA said, well, we never put the agreement in writing. The new DA said, I'm not bound by an oral agreement. And that's why they prosecuted him. Bill Cosby was guilty by his own words, not literally very much these women said. These women actually just supported and co-signed what he said himself. He convicted himself.
So he just said, I didn't know that. So he just said everything and thinking that there was an agreement in place, and there was not. And that came back to bite him.
Yeah. So again, goes back to when you asked me, what can Deshaun Watson do? Keep your mouth shut.
Don't say anything.
Don't say nothing
to anybody.
And don't answer any more Instagram, requests. I don't care if you
just shut down.
Naked pictures. Say I'm not interested.
Just shut down all of your social media.
Absolutely. Take his phone away. He should, Deshaun Watson should have a rotary cell phone at this point.
A flip phone, one of those old Nokia.
No texting, no camera, no video on it. All he can do is call out on it, and that's it.
He can call, get one of those phones where it's got 3 buttons. His lawyer, 911, and maybe the other lawyer.
Exactly. Because at this point, everything he says will only hurt him.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on tonight. You are a trooper. Your nose started bleeding. And you just kept talking.
I had my nose start bleeding one time in a trial. And I just kept during trial, and I just turned to the jury. I said, I know my nose is bleeding, but this is important. Let's keep going. And so I just kept my hand over my nose and just worked it until the judge took a break.
So before we go, tell us one story that of me during my time working for you that will make everybody laugh. And here's another thing. Everybody in our family, my sisters, I think both of them did at one point. Even my wife worked for you at one point in time before we were married. But we have all experienced the true greatness of Attorney Killian.
I don't think any of you called it greatness at the time.
No, we didn't. But now we look back on it.
Is what the came up. Look, I admit I'm an intense person. I'm trying to, modulate it. So here's my favorite trait. By the way, do they call you Trey or do they call you Ben?
They call me Ben, but you can call me Trey. It's fine.
Okay, well, everybody in the family calls him Trey. So this is my Trey story. So at one point, I had the largest minority firm in Oakland, and we had an entire floor of an office building. And we had a room back then. Computers weren't as advanced as they are. So we had what we called our workroom, where we had 2 copiers and workstations, and secretaries had computers and all of that. And so it was an older building and the windows open. So I gave Trey a stack of papers about this big. And I said to him, listen, I need you to make 2 copies of this stack of papers. I want you to collate them and staple them together. And so he goes, okay. And Trey went to the copying machine and he put the stack on top of a tray that was right next to the open window. And a breeze came in and blew all the papers out the window. And my secretary comes in and says, Clinton, you got to come see this. And I went, what? And I go in there and all you see is the fluttering of the paper. We were on the 10th floor. And all you saw was papers fluttering 10 floors down to a parking lot. And Trey is just standing there. His eyes is as big as quarters. And I'm like, Trey, what happened? I don't know. I said, how did the papers get out the window? I don't know. Like, you're out of your fucking mind. What are we going to do about this? He goes, I don't know. That's all he said. I don't know. I don't know. I said, oh, hell no. You're going to go down there and get all those papers out of the parking lot. So he went down into the parking lot and you could see him out the window and picking up every paper off cars, off the pavement. But to his credit, he picked up every page and bought them back.
And I learned a lot of skills. I'll say this, working there that I still use to this day, answering phones, calling people with a proper, a proper approach and a proper saying. I mean, so it was definitely great times, great stories. Now let me see. My parents said not that story. Yeah, I knew he was going to tell that story. I knew it because that's the funniest one out of all of them. But there's more. I said that sounds like Trey. Laugh out loud. But yeah, it was a great time, and I think tonight is even greater to get you on the show. I know you've been on the show in the past. We were talking about the Raiders, and now the Raiders are in Vegas.
No, they're called the Traders. The Raiders only play in Oakland. Traders play everywhere else.
But yeah, we have to do this again. I mean, there's always
going to be somebody coming up.
Always. So I mean, maybe we do this once a month or something. We can talk and. But tell everybody about your law firm and what you guys do and where it's located. Because somebody asked, "Where are you?" He's in California. Because he said, I think Ivan was saying, "I need his number."
Tell Ivan that I charge $450 an hour, and it starts when I say hello.
the ticker starts.
Yeah, no, I that's kidding. If any of your friends call me, I'll happily talk to them just because they're your friend. If they say I'm a friend of Trey's, then I'll be happy to talk with them. Free of charge. But unlike most people, I wanted to be a lawyer literally all my life. When I was a little boy growing up in segregated North Carolina, when I saw the lawyers for the NAACP come to my little town of Hickory, North Carolina to desegregate the schools, and I saw these little skinny black guys in dark suits with white shirts and skinny little ties and briefcases, and white folks were terrified of them because they had the power to change society. And it was amazing to watch it as a young age. And this is the importance of, and I applaud any black person out there who's a teacher or involved in education, because this is the prime reason you need black teachers, so that black kids have someone that they can relate to and someone who will be supportive of them. Right. When I was in the first grade, like they used to do. At the end of the year, the teacher would call each student up to her desk one at a time. And they had this little chart they would fill out about what your goals and ambitions and how you did in school this year and what you need to work on over the summer. And one of the questions that they always ask is, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, when I was in the first grade, I said I wanted to be a fireman. So my first grade teacher wrote into my record, he wants to be a fireman. When I was in the second grade and my second grade teacher did the same thing, I told her I wanted to be a football player. And my second grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Burrick, a black woman who was dedicated to making sure we learn. She said, "Oh, no, you're not." I said, "Ma'am," she said, "you're not going to waste your talents and your intelligence and all your learning just to play football." She said, "You're going to make something of yourself more than a football player." She said, "You go home tonight and I want you to come back and I want you to tell me what you really want to do. Something that's going to use your brain and your intelligence and your skills beside running on a field." And I went home and I thought about it and I said, I really want to be a lawyer, but the chances of me, a little black kid, ever getting a chance to be a lawyer is not very great. But I went back that next day and Ms. Burritt called me up and she said, "Okay, what do you want to be?" I said, "I want to be a lawyer." She said, "Clinton, you will be a lawyer. If that's what you want to do, you work at it, you study like you're doing, and you will be a lawyer." She says, "I'm proud of you." And one of the proudest moments of my life, Trey, was when I went home to North Carolina and I told my first and second grade teacher, I am a lawyer now.
Wow. That's powerful. And that goes back to what you said. The teachers, and specifically black teachers in these inner cities, in these neighborhoods. My sister, that's a teacher. I mean, all that goes, that's powerful because it's someone that looks like you and you're able to tell them that you can do this thing that you're writing down or that you think maybe you can't do.
Exactly. And you should never underestimate your family either, because your family is supportive of you in ways that you may not understand now or may not understand when you're a kid or younger. But when you get older, it will make an impact on your life. I'll tell you another example. My granddaddy, I went home when I was a second year law student. And I went home in the summer, and you remember grandmom and granddad, if you went to their house, if you visited on Sunday, you went to church with them.
Right.
And I'd bought a coat and a shirt and a suit coat and a shirt and some dress slacks to wear to church, but I had forgotten to bring a tie. And so I said to granddaddy, I said, "Granddad, I need a tie to wear to church." He took me into his closet and he opened up his closet and he had all of these ties in there. And all of them were these little skinny ties. But they were from the 40s and 50s and they were made of silk and cotton. They weren't made of synthetic fibers. They were made of natural fibers. And I go, "Granddad, look at all these ties." Remember in the early 80s, skinny ties were in.
Right.
And I said, "These are so cool, Granddaddy." And he said, "Well, get one to wear to church." He said, "In fact, take as many of them that you want." And I said, "Well, Granddad, I don't want to take your ties." And he said, "No, son, you take them." He said, "I never had a job where I wore a tie every day. You're going to be a lawyer soon and you'll need ties to wear every day. So you take as many of my ties you want." And I wore his ties long after skinny ties were out of fashion. And I wore all of his ties except one until they fell apart. So, and you remember when you worked for me, didn't I have a skinny tie on?
You did. And they're back again now.
Right. And people would laugh, "Why are you wearing those skinny ties?" I said, "This is to honor my granddaddy. This is my homage to my granddaddy." So you never forget the importance of family, because family is there for you when nobody else will be. And they will support you in ways that you don't ever realize until later.
Right. That's true. That's very true. Man, this was a great conversation. Ivan says I need to get you on my podcast to talk about prepaid legal, whether we should develop a relationship with an attorney to keep on retainer, and the biggest mistake our culture makes with regard to legal matters, not just criminal but civil as well. Missed opportunities, legal speaking. So I will get you guys in touch with each other. He's starting up a podcast himself, so I think he would be a great guest.
Well, Ivan, I'll tell you this. You think about this. Prepaid legal services is like owning a shoe store that only sells a size 9 shoe. Now, you think about what you think is the problems with having a store that only sells a size 9 shoe.
Not everybody wears a size 9 shoe.
Exactly. And if you buy a shoe from there and you don't wear a 9, you kind of wasted your money, didn't you?
Right.
Prepaid legal services are good for some things, but it's a very limited something.
Well, you definitely got some new fans, and I'm going to be passing out your number to a couple of people for them to give you a call.
Well, I appreciate it, but, I'm kind of disappointed that nobody on your show is a doctor or some medical training that didn't tell me how to stop this nosebleed. Y'all just going to let me bleed to death on here.
Yeah, I don't have any doctors. Not yet.
You got to step up your game now. Let's get some people in here who can help out.
You got a medical emergency on the other end. You're right. True.
Oh, I'll be happy to tell you. Now if you want to hear funny legal stories next time, I'll tell you some funny legal stories.
Definitely. We'll definitely do this again. Thank you for coming on tonight. And I'll say this, my uncle has been supportive in everything that I've done, even since I was a kid walking around selling these candy bars or selling shirts or selling stuff for baseball or whatever it was. You've always been supportive, and like I've said this before, I appreciate that.
Hey, family. You're family. You're always going to be family, and anything I can do to support positive people like you who are doing something and enhancing your abilities and your skills. I enjoy listening to you. I don't get a chance to listen to you all the time, but I enjoy your show. I enjoy your guests. That one where the 4 of you are talking together.
Yeah.
What that show is called, but that is like sitting in a barbershop. I so much love listening to you guys.
Yep, that's the forecast. Ivan is a part of that show, and as well as another guy, Wilkes, that was commenting earlier. But yeah, I found a love in doing this just because it's free. It's not limited. It's not, nobody's telling you what you can or can't say, and you can talk about any topic you want. So that's why I encourage people to start a podcast, because it's free and you can release those feelings and thoughts and everything you have.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure. I'm honored to be a part of, your show, and I enjoyed seeing you again. Like I said, you're my nephew, your family, and I just adore you, your wife, and your little girl, Ari.
Yes. Well, thank you. And you have a wonderful night. And we'll be Regina. Do you know Regina Tucker?
Yeah, she's from Hickory.
She said, "Hey, homie, nice surprise."
Yeah, Regina was, how when you're growing up, that whether you see a girl, she's 4 or 10 or 14 or 30 or 50, she's always an attractive woman.
Yes.
Well, Regina was born cute, and she's still an attractive woman. And I so enjoy seeing her on Facebook because, I grew up in the same little town of Hickory with her. And she's turned out to be a wonderful adult, but she has this effervescent smile, and she was always she was a cheerleader in high school.
She put the laugh emojis on there.
Hey, Regina, listen, you thought I was just a little nerdy kid that wasn't going to amount to anything. How you like me now?
That's what Facebook does. It brings back memories and friends. Says she's just getting in from a flight. Well, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate that. We appreciate you tuning in tonight. Ivan says we coming to California too. He's probably talking about the forecast.
When COVID lifts and we can travel again, you guys should come out here and do a show in California on location. We'll go to the beach. We'll sit under palm trees. Of course, there's no palm trees up here in Northern California.
That's true.
We'll pretend.
We'll have fake palm trees. We'll do a backdrop like what this is right here. We'll do a green screen. We'll put that. We'll do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody thinks California is Southern California. There's a whole different lifestyle in Northern California. It gets cold here.
Right.
Well, you grew up here,
Oh yeah. And then a funny story before we go. Every time I tell someone I grew up in California, it was like, oh, Too Short. Or you from LA? I was like, no, I'm not from LA. And no, I don't know Too Short. But that was even when I was in college, people would always, the follow-up question was, oh, some rapper, or you live in LA. Like, no, I live in Emeryville. Like, where is that? Between Oakland and Berkeley. It's like, where is that? Hey, look it up on a map.
Yeah, when I left Hickory to come to Stanford to go to college, the first question I always got asked is, did you run into Annette Funicello on the beach? Annette Funicello was the star of all those bikini movies in the 60s.
Oh,
she was on the Disney Mouseketeers as a little girl, and then she did all these bikini movies in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was very disappointed when I got here and realized that, number one, there are no beaches in Northern California that you swim in because the water's about 40 degrees. And number two, there's nobody at the beach, even if you were going to swim.
Yeah, the only thing you have, my parents said Alameda Beach, but I don't remember swimming there, though. I know that was the marina, but the Emeryville Marina and Alameda and San Leandro.
You can go to the Alameda Beach. It's a little warmer because, it's like a cove and there's not strong waves. But to swim, you got to go way out into the water, like a half a mile out to get in the water above your chest.
Right. And you're right, Dad. Yep, Too Short was my grandmother's neighbor when she lived in West Oakland. So yeah, that was true. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I ever met him. But that I do bring up that story.
Guy. He was the short guy.
Exactly. So it's Clinton. He said Uncle Clifton seems like such a cool dude. I relate to him because I'm pretty intense myself. And Ivan's a business owner here in Texas. He owns Enviro Clean, which they do restoration, which what happened, a couple of, that was last month with the storm and everything, his business has been booming. We kind of touched on that. Yeah.
Well, good for you, Ivan. You keep it up. It's always good to see Black folks doing something that you've never seen a Black person do before.
That's true. Podcast on the beach with a coat.
Exactly. Because it's cold. Listen, as you know, and I'm sure you can tell your audience, the coldest months of the year in this part of California is July and August.
Yeah, true.
Those are our winter months out here. So it's always funny to see the tourists show up in T-shirts and shorts in July and August, and they're freezing.
Right. And they left their coat at home, so they got to go to Walmart or Target and go get a coat.
Exactly. Have you ever seen those guys in Fisherman Wharves who sell sweatshirts in July and August. They have
Yeah.
just stacks of them. They charge like $40 for a sweatshirt.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And the tourists are flocking to them because they didn't bring anything warm. This
Yep.
is July and August. They expect it to be 90 degrees and it's 40.
And the sweater says, "I didn't bring my sweater at Fisherman's Wharf." Yeah. So they're being the punchline of jokes, but they're gonna be warm.
Yeah,
if nothing else.
Because it gets cold up here. So yeah, so if you got time, I'll tell you one other funny story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one year I had a trial. It's actually the longest continual trial I've had. The trial itself lasted over 6 weeks, and we were in trial every day. Trial started at 8:30 and went to 5 o'clock back then. And it was a jury trial. And it was a big trial. Had lots of witnesses. And as you know, I can get here. Let me turn a light on so I don't look like I just stole something.
And see, it's starting to get dark behind you. I figured you were.
How's that?
There we go. That's better.
Is that better?
Yep, that's better.
Or here.
My dad said they're 3 for $25 way back in the cut. You right. My dad always knows where the hookups are to get the hookup Warriors gear and other gear. All right,
how's that? Is that better?
That's good.
So one day I was cross-examining this crucial witness, and I had, studied that night. I got up first thing. When I opened my eyes, that was what was on my mind. And I got dressed for court, and I go to court. And so there's a million techniques that lawyers do. And when you're cross-examining somebody and you want the jury to be focused on what you're saying as well as what the witness is saying, what you do is you go stand close to the to the jury box, so that the witness has to look at you and in turn see the jury. And because you're standing right next to the jury, they hear your voice clearer.
Yeah.
And they can watch your reactions because you're right there and they all turn to look at you.
Right.
And so I had this guy cross-examining, and I was hammering on the points on him, and he would look to his attorney. I say, no, look at me. I'm the one asking you questions. Look at me when I'm talking to you. And he would, snap and look at me, and the jury is hanging on my every word. And I hit him with that zinger question. I know I had caught him, and I was sitting there bouncing on the balls of my feet because I knew I had him, and the jury's all looking at me. And I looked down at my shoes, and I got on one brown loafer and one black lace-up shoe.
Yeah, how did the rest of that case go?
Well, it was in the morning, so at lunchtime I went home and changed shoes and put on 2 black ones. But I was so focused on the case that when I got dressed that morning, I didn't even realize I put on mixed-match shoes. So we won the trial. We defensed the plaintiff. Defense means they don't get any money.
Mm-hmm.
And after the trial, jurors can talk directly to the attorneys. And generally, they all have questions because they always want to ask about something that happened in the trial. All the jurors came up to me and they all had the same question. They said, you remember that day in the trial when you had on those mixed-match shoes? Did you do that intentionally so we would pay attention to everything you were saying?
No, but it worked out that way.
And I said, of course. Juror said, well, it worked because I couldn't take my eyes off of you. I kept looking at you and like, why is he wearing mixed-match shoes?
Wow. And I've seen that before. I've seen the lawyers stand next to the jury boxes. You're right. That's them being able to kind of build a relationship with them, and then it forces the person that you're talking to look that way. So that's a really good tactic.
Yeah, not only look that way, but they won't look directly at the jurors.
Mm-hmm.
So all they're seeing is the side of their face.
Right.
which makes them a little suspicious of how truthful he is. Because when you're truthful, you look somebody in the eye, right?
Right.
But they're kind of looking to the side, and I'm making them pay attention to me. So they're looking at me, but not the jurors.
Right. Right.
And like you said, I'm the one closest to the jurors. I'm right there. So yeah, he's with us. He's asking the questions I wanted to hear. Let's see what he's going to ask. And so the witnesses are that's how you unsettle a witness. There's a lot of other things you can do to unsettle a witness, but that's one of the most effective ones.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Now, of course, you can wear mix-max shoes, and that always works.
Right, that works too. I've always wanted to ask a lawyer this question. I'm surprised I've never asked you this, but do you watch Law and Order? Do you watch these kind of shows, or is it kind of stupid to you with the way they do them and everything?
Listen, I watch Perry Mason every night to this day.
Really?
And I watched Perry Mason as a child. Perry Mason is probably the closest show to what actually happens in a courtroom. Law and Order, I watch a little bit, but I don't like it as much because it's too contrived.
They complete everything in one episode, and it's
a little contrived how they get that just right amount of evidence that pushes the case over. That never happens in real life. You already know what the evidence is before you start the trial.
Right.
And the thing about Perry Mason is they use words like hearsay. They use best evidence rule. They use words that lawyers use, whereas most of these lawyer shows, they're comically made up.
Yeah.
Nothing like that happens in a courtroom. And so, no. It's just like Walter Payton said back in the 70s. Someone asked him, do you ever watch Monday Night Football? And Walter Payton said, hell no. Do you think a secretary goes home and types at night?
That's good.
So that's the way I feel about most legal shows. I'm doing this all day. I'm not going to go home and watch it too.
Watch more of it, yeah.
Right. Why not just hit myself in the head with a hammer instead of just watching television?
Right.
But no, most of it is just not realistic. If you want to see a realistic courtroom drama, go see a real trial. They're open to the public, except the only kind of cases that are not open to the public are one that involves minors or involves sexual assaults. Just about every other case is open. Every city any city with any bit of size has a courtroom. It's free admission and it's free entertainment.
That's true.
And so go.
Yeah, and that goes back to plenty of times I went to court with you and sat in there, and I was in high school probably a couple of those times.
Yeah, you were, and it left an impression on you, didn't it?
You did. It did. Not to ever be back here on the other side. To be here as a juror, of course, or come to visit, but not to be on that other side.
Not to be sitting at a table.
Right.
And even though you got out of town too quickly when I was younger, anybody who told me they were going to get married, I would take them down to divorce court and let them see what happens when a marriage goes wrong.
That's a good idea.
Let them realize there are consequences for mistakes in a marriage.
Very true. Very true.
And so no, the court is free. And it's open to the public. They do it every day of the week. So you can go down there and get free entertainment.
That's true. With real people. Real people. Like, what is that? Is that the People's Court? Real people, real stories. Well, you get to see real people in real situations.
That's real BS, though.
Right.
It's so contrived. It's unbelievable.
And it's all chopped up. What you see on TV is probably the whole thing chopped up into separate pieces.
No, it's even worse than that. It's scripted.
Yeah.
You write
I figured that.
So they have that little thing at the end. Are you involved in a small claims case? Call us and so you call them, you tell them what your case is about. They call the other party and they say, okay, we're going to use your case. We're going to pay you $500. We're going to pay you $500.
Yeah.
So you're not going to win or lose.
Yeah.
And you're going to go in there and act a fool for the camera and let the judge yell at you. And then they got cheap content to put on television.
Yep.
Those shows cost virtually nothing to produce. And the judges are the only ones who are making, well, the producers as well, but in terms of the actors, the judges are the only one who makes money.
Yeah. That's why Judge Judy has been on for so long.
Well, she owns her show, so she's the producer and the syndicator. So she owns the show and she sells it all over the country.
Yeah. And I actually had a couple of friends that were on one of these shows, Divorce Court or Judge Judy or something. I was like, wow, I know them. I mean, and I figured that you get something because you're coming there to tell your story, if you will, and share whatever it is that they advise you to share. But
yeah, it's all contrived and it's not real. Go watch a real courthouse and watch real courtroom drama.
Yeah. Well,
so you were going to ask me a question and then I'll let you go.
No, it was just a question about the court shows, if that was something that you watched, but that was it.
Yeah, I watch Perry Mason because it's the closest to a real legal drama show.
Yeah.
And I will watch Law and Order occasionally. I used to watch it a lot. The earlier Law and Orders were better because they didn't try to sensationalize it.
Yeah, now every episode is based on something happening today. So if it's crimes about race or whatever is like prominent in today, that's what they're going to put in every weekly episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yep.
Well,
so
thank you. That's it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
We will do this again. I will be in touch. Somebody will slip up because somebody does every month. And we'll come on and talk about it. So, but it was a great time having you on tonight.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for the time. And it was a pleasure meeting all of your audience viewers and their questions. Yeah, I couldn't think. What do you call people watch it on the internet?
Viewers.
Viewers? Are they e-viewers or what do you
just viewers? I keep it simple.
Okay. Well, thank you to all your viewers and your followers. It was a pleasure talking to you. I appreciated the questions and look forward to seeing you and Ari and Erica in person instead of over the internet.
Yes. We're looking forward to it. But have a good night. Tell Katrina that we said hi as well.
I will. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.